Erica is a senior UX content designer on the Microsoft 365 content experience team. She's a former journalist, and we discovered in our pre-event chat that we also have a shared past in publishing. She's worked as a UX writer and a content strategist focusing on content analytics. She's done work for Expedia, Primera Blue Cross, Amazon, Rover, but she is now at Microsoft. She also teaches at the School of Visual Concepts and in the University of Washington Master's Program in Communication and Digital Media. And if that isn't enough, she also is a mentor for Ladies That UX, Hexagon UX, and the UX Mentorship Program at Microsoft. So we are very happy to have her here to talk with us about content testing, how to discover the content that appeals most to your audience. So Erica, please take it away.
Thank you, Paula,
I will
and thank
stop
you, Larry.
sharing here.
Yeah, I will start sharing. Let's see, boom. There we go. Well, thanks for coming out, everyone, or sitting at your computer for another few minutes. I know it's been a little bit of a hectic day. I did not watch any news today, so feeling psyched to talk about content testing. I know I'll catch up later, but thank you for coming. I'll get right to it if I can, if I'm gonna, let's see. Yep, there's a lot to cover. I will go fairly quickly. Flag me if I'm going too fast. Yeah, I think I might have gotten the hashtags wrong, Paula, apologies, but if you do want to tweet along, feel free. And you heard the spiel about where I've been. It's more like, where haven't I worked? I worked many places in Seattle, e-commerce, content marketing, UX content, journalism. So I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of content, and I'll touch upon all those different types of content today. So what do we talk about when we're talking about content testing? This is different than A/B experimentation, but to me, it can be even more valuable. So it's a speedy way to find out what your audience is thinking about your content, because we all have biases. We all come to work with our backgrounds that may or may not align with our customers' wants and needs. So it's a great way to throw your content in front of your audience and ask them for their feedback. And you can get, I call them golden nuggets of insights from doing this. And you can use programs to do it, or you can do like the shoe leather version of running out. Well, COVID, this isn't so easy, but when I worked at startups, it had zero content budget other than me. And our product owners, we would go running around the sidewalks in Seattle and asking people, would you read this web page printout? Would you tell me what you think of this? It can be done for free. So there's many ways you can do it, from $0 to more expensive platforms that you can leverage. So what I think is so great about it is it gets you feedback super quickly, and you can target it depending on what program you use or what method you use. You can get it in front of people who are as similar to your audience as you can do it. Now, if you work for a big company like Amazon that has lots of customers, you can target it as broadly as that. Or if you have a very precise audience, like what I work with right now, it's a lot of IT administrators, and they're they've got their own wants and needs. We can target our content tests to that audience to get their feedback, because they're a certain type of person with a certain type of problem, and it's really interesting to see their point of view. Like I said, you are not your customer in many cases, and this is a way to bring your customer, the voice of the customer, into your work. And I mentioned biases. This is a great graphic I found. I don't know who wrote it. It's down there somewhere, but it's a poster of all the different biases that exist, and there's a lot of them. I think there's recency bias. There's, I'm from Massachusetts. I'm a white woman who's 50 years old, and so I come to work with those biases. And I'll show you an example of content that the age of the people working on the content came to bear on what learnings we found in the content testing. Was really fascinating that we had a not diverse content team, and we had to do content testing to hear the voices of all of our customers, and had some gobsmacking insights as a result. So I see some of my coworkers are in the audience here. They've heard this ad nauseum, like this is a quick way to get input that can open your eyes to things you didn't even think about. And so I think it's quite fascinating. I've been doing this for about 5 years, I think. One way or another, I've been doing A/B experimentation longer than that, and I am a bigger fan of content testing or quick turn content research because it helps me do my job better than A/B testing. Not that A/B testing is not a good thing to do, but this is, I think, a way that you can you can speed up your A/B testing and move it along more quickly because you can test different versions of content before you go into a long, A/B tests take a while and they have to cook for so long before they get to statistical significance, and that doesn't happen with content testing. Let's see, I hope you're being blinded. These are the golden nuggets that I'm talking about. The insights that bubble up, especially in the qualitative data that you get, which is, it doesn't have anything to do with quality. It has to do with what people are thinking and what people are saying about your content, not just how many people like it, what percentage of people like this homepage versus that homepage, or what percent of people like this word over that word. It's what people say when you ask them an open-ended question of, what do you think? Or what do you feel when you see this? That's where the really amazing insights come through, I think. I think one thing that has really been highlighted to me as I've been working on content testing is, I've created many style guides for Nordstrom, for Expedia, for Amazon, and those were words that I thought were good to include in a style guide based on my own opinion. They were subjective of, this word is better than that word, or I think this is better for our audience versus that word. I didn't really validate a lot of the style guides that I've worked on. It was more, I think this, or this sounds better. This is a gut feeling of mine. I didn't use data to inform that work. And I think using this content testing as a way to make your style guides, your voice and tone guidelines more durable and more valuable for your whole organization. I'm going to get on my high horse for a second about statistical significance. I love A/B experiments, but I think one thing I want to highlight here is that content testing it's content. We're not making vaccines. We're not working for Novartis or making the next COVID treatment. It's great to get rigor in the work that we do for content, but maybe we don't need to be so hung up on statistical significance. That's my 2 cents about that. I think I see teams get really hung up on running a test, an A/B experiment, until it is statistically significant at the expense of their customer experience. So content testing is a way that you can get quicker results and put them into action, act on those insights more quickly than hanging around for weeks or even months sometimes for an A/B experiment, depending on what your audience looks like. Yeah, so like I said, content testing is something you can do before you do an A/B experiment, and that's something I would encourage you all to think about with your whole, I don't know if you're in e-commerce or in content marketing or UX content, you've probably got product owners, you've probably got user researchers, visual designers. All these people should be aware of the content testing you're doing when you do it, because it's fascinating the insights you can get, and it's great to share with your whole team. And these are a few of the tools that you can use. User Zoom is great. Usertesting.com is one I use a lot, and I'll show you some specific examples from it. You can even use SurveyMonkey or email or just a piece of paper and a clipboard or just your phone to do this kind of testing. Let's see, I'll take a breather. This is, honestly, this is a sort of embarrassing example of content testing that I want to share with all of you because it was so shocking to me. I was working for Premier Blue Cross, which was working to sell healthcare plans for the Affordable Care Act. And we had a lot of customers who were mad that they were so expensive. They didn't want to buy a plan. And this is back when you would get a ding on your taxes if you didn't buy a healthcare plan. There was all sorts of angst with our customers because it was so emotional. It was, health is super important. And this, who likes to buy health insurance? It's a painful process. And we were not seeing the sales that we wanted on our homepage. And so we asked, this is an example of bronze, silver, and gold. We had bronze, silver, and gold plans, which if you've seen the Olympics, if you're anyone over 10 years old, you get that there's good, better, and best. And so be it. I think these the bronze plan was cheap, the silver plan was medium, like the happy medium, and then the gold plan was super expensive and we expected hardly anyone to buy that because it was really meant for people who needed more care, who had chronic illness or what have you, serious ongoing health problems. That was the gold plan. We wanted to sell more of the silver plan because we knew people would renew. We knew people would be happy. We knew people didn't call customer service when they bought the silver plan. It was good for the customers and it was good for our company, but it wasn't selling. We were selling a zillion bronze plans, and this was a problem. And just the silver plan, it was almost like it was invisible on the homepage. We looked at heat maps, we looked at the analytics, and we were like, what the hell is going on with this silver plan? It was a little bit of a mystery, so we did some content testing and asked our customers, what do you think of this screen grab of our homepage? Tell us what you think of this bronze, silver, and gold offering here for you. And what we found was nobody wanted the silver plan because they thought it was for Medicare. They thought it was not for them. They said, this is not for me. I am not over 65. Why would I buy the silver plan? And the product team, we all sat down and went, oh my goodness, like, yes, we do sell Medicare. Primera does sell Medicare plans, but these are plans for everybody from 18 to 65. So when we got that feedback, we all took a step back. I think our jaws hit the ground. And then we decided that we had to put content on the homepage to explain silver, that is not Medicare. Medicare plans are here. It was an amazing shock to us to know that something that we thought was plain as day, bronze, silver, gold, was self-explanatory, but silver meant something completely different to our customers. And it wasn't until we did this content test that we understood the behavior of our customers. We could have A/B tested this. We could have called it good, better, best. It wasn't until we put this out there to our customers that we learned, holy Moses, Medicare's over here. This is not Medicare. Click away. And then as soon as we added that little sentence to the homepage, which we never would have known to do besides unless we content tested, all the click-through and the purchases and the customer, it was amazing. It was incredible, the difference that it made. It was gobsmacking, truly. Just a simple word like silver didn't mean what we thought it meant to our customers, and they couldn't tell us that until we asked them. And that's the whole purpose of content testing, to understand where your customers are coming from, because they won't tell you unless you ask. I'll give another quick example. My coworkers will laugh at this. We sell Office 365, now known as Microsoft 365 software. And it is a little confusing sometimes. There are lots of terminology. There's lots of terminology that, computer terminology. It can be jargon-y. It can be overwhelming or intimidating. And we had some content that talks about licenses, that you need licenses before you can use your software. You need to assign a license to people who will use the software in your company. And my complaint about this was, a license it reminds me of the DMV. It sounds like something prohibitive, something expensive, something bureaucratic. And seat is another word. A couple product owners were talking about, let's use seat instead. Let's swap out every instance of license in our content and put in seat. And I thought, that's a little risky. Do we really want to do that? Let's test it. And so we tested and asked 20 people to look at a screen grab of our website. And we swapped in seat in one example and license in another, and asked people which one is clear to you. And seat to me is like football game, popcorn, movie. Seat seems positive and license seems heavy and ugh. And my hypothesis was, seat's going to be the winner. No, hands down, seat's going to win. And it didn't at all. And what we found when we asked people about seat, they're like, I don't know what that means. Maybe because this is a term that was used years ago for software. Seat was not clear to an overwhelming majority of people who took the test. They were like, not clear at all. This is an example of the qualitative feedback we got from the test. And when I'm analyzing this kind of data, I like to take my highlighter and go through and try to code it. Like what is response A, response B, try to find patterns bubbling up in it. The green shows where people are getting it, that they understood the term and responded in a way that was expected, and yellow was not expected. So after this test, just 20 people, I think it took about an afternoon to run. We put this into user testing and let it cook for just a few hours, and then we got all this response from people who were in our target audience, and it was shocking to me anyway. I think not to all of my coworkers, but we got validation that seat is not the right word, that the right word was already in our content. But what we found bubbling up in that qualitative information, the what do you think information, was that people didn't know how many they needed. And that's a problem when you're buying expensive software, because people were actually thinking, oh, I need one license for my company. And some people thought, oh, I need a license for my phone and my laptop. So if I have a company of 50, I need to buy 100 licenses. So people were buying too many or not enough. And guess what? They were getting mad and then calling customer service and complaining. I don't understand why my software isn't working. I didn't expect you to charge me more to get more people in my company to use the software. That's an expensive thing. Every customer service call has a dollar bill attached to it. So the more we can prevent those with our content, the better off the business health. So that's the big insight from this test. Was nothing, I didn't even expect to get those golden nuggets bubbling up in this test, but we found some information that was super valuable to implement on the website and prevent customers from getting mad. And then the long-term value of these customers who are happier is better. And I don't want to say that this is like a little copy miracle, but it is fascinating to learn those kind of things from content testing. So yeah, so we added a tiny bit of content to the website. You need one license for each user, which, 3 out of 20 people were confused about that, but that's enough for us to change the website to the content on the, it's a Microsoft 365 admin center. Millions of people use it. And so this little change, as people are purchasing, they will understand what they're getting into and be clear on what they need to do, so they're not angry the second they buy their product. Larry, I'll stop there. Are there questions that I can field right here? Take a little break for questions, or is everyone?
We do have a couple of questions. I think nothing super timely. I guess the one thing that came up a little bit is the use of the word silver. There was a little discussion and comments and questions about that. Do you have a sense of what it was? Is it universal? Do different age groups think of silver, or do you have to be old to think of it that way, or anything to elaborate on that?
I think there is, like Centrum Silver, like in the photo, the vitamins, they're marketed to people over 65. AARP has some silver programs that your Silver Sneakers is a fitness program for people over 65. It wasn't, I think that I used to go to, before COVID, I went to the gym in Ballard that had a Silver Sneakers program. So I knew of that, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together to go, oh, Silver Sneakers, silver is silver hair, silver fox, silver, it's a term that people use for marketing products for people who are of a certain age. And, Medicare is only for people over 65. Anyway, yeah, so silver, I am 50, I'm getting up there, I get the AARP mailers, and it didn't, I was a little younger when I went to Premier, but it didn't even occur to me. Silver means one thing to a certain chunk of our audience, and just people were avoiding that call to action button like the plague. It was like it had kryptonite on it until we added that little bit of copy to it. So that's, it was, we would never have known what the problem was with the website until we did that test.
And also on that same thing, Laureen had asked, she said she thinks that the gold, silver, bronze is a federal government regime to allow like apples to apples comparison across states or plan offerings. Is that?
Yes, it was. Yes. So to market those products, we had to get certified by, I don't know what the regulatory body was, but we had to get those, our content had to go through an approval process with the federal government. So we had to get that little change that we added to the website, we had to get that approved. We had to get all the content approved by the government to do any marketing related to the Affordable Care Act.
Got it. And that might answer a question right before that Lena had about, was there consideration to change the plan names altogether to avoid that whole problem?
Yeah, we couldn't. I mean, if there were flexibility there, we could have called it good, better, best, or we could have, if it were a regular e-commerce sort of experience, not a government regulated one, we would have had more flexibility. But you think, I mean, it was just such a basic thing of that paradigm of your third runner-up, your second runner-up, your first, it's so, I think the government probably chose it because they thought it was clear that you're going to get cheap, most expensive, medium, cheapest. It's just one of those things that's sort of ingrained in, in our culture. But yeah, I think if another e-commerce company could have chosen different words, and you could do content testing to determine what would you pay customers, what would you use to describe this product, and then you can have your customers help you do your job for you in that way.
Hannah, quickly, it also seems germane to where we're at. There were a couple of questions about both about subject recruitment and also about about tools and for recruiting for content testing, but also particular question about how large the audience, how big an N you need to.
I knew y'all would ask that question. Yeah, I'd say 10. Nielsen Norman Group recommends as few as 5. I find 10 is helpful to get, put your finger in the air and get a litmus test response. 20 is great. It can take a little while longer. Again, this is not statistically significant research, but it is getting a feel for what your customers, a sampling of your customers are telling you. It is, take it all with a grain of salt. I think it's, 5 is what Nielsen Norman Group recommends. I think that's, I don't know, like it's not repeatable. This is not the scientific method. We're not, like I said, we're not creating a vaccine for COVID, but we're getting feedback from our customers to go, I never thought of that. Or that's a word I never considered. Or, 80% of people prefer this. Let's run with that kind of input.
Cool. Well, we've got some more questions lining up, but why don't you go ahead and I'll kind of.
Okay, I'll keep chatting, and I've got my eyes on the clock. This is a sample report that our team creates related to our research. Veronica is a user researcher on our team. I'm from the content team. We collaborate on these terminology tests that we're calling them to find out what our customers are really thinking about the specific words that we're using in our content. And this has recommendations that we share throughout the company. Hey, if you're in the Azure team or if you're in another part of Microsoft, you can look at this report and understand what we did, what the study involved, when we ran it, and what the insights and findings were. So this is our way. This is, not every company has all the resources Microsoft does, but this is a way to share out, hey, I did this content testing, check it out. This is something that will live, within our team for a long time and provides, I forget how many people have read this report. It's, I think at least 50 people not in my team have read this report and are getting value from it because we're sharing the love, we're sharing the content love across the company as best we can. And related to the question that you mentioned, Larry, about how do you target the audience, I have an example from user testing that I can show you how you can delineate who you want to have participate in your test. I'll just give a very quick run through of this example. I was on a content marketing team last year, and for 3 years previous, we were churning out content marketing. We call them assets because they were quite expensive to produce. Content marketing to help drive customer demand to Microsoft products. And I had an ebook, one of these things that you see them advertise all over the place where you can fill out your name and address and email, and then you get to download this kind of thing. This is being marketed to enterprise companies, and long story short, it had an enormous 6-figure marketing budget against it. There was a lot riding on this. A lot of pressure to make sure that it was catching attention on social media and on LinkedIn, wherever we were marketing it. We wanted it to jump out at people. It was competing with Salesforce. And I think Microsoft had 3% of the market share and Salesforce has 97% of the market share for this type of product. So kind of a David and Goliath story. And it was really, really kind of intimidating to know that our product was not known. No one knew that Microsoft has this sort of product. So anyway, I wanted to get a catchy title for this piece to grab people's attention, cut through all the noise of all the marketing out there for pieces of content like this. And I was hemming and hawing over what word would be appealing to people who work on sales teams who they've got turnover on their team. They've got a lot of worries. They have a lot of insomnia. And I thought, they want to be smart. They want to do the right thing, but what's the right word to use in this title? I have no idea. And so I went to the thesaurus, I went to Merriam-Webster, and I was like, they're sales leaders. And honestly, half of this title, there were elements of profitable relationships. This was something that came from the marketing team. and savvy, this adjective was on my shoulders. Like, what's an adjective here that's going to capture their attention? And I was like, I don't know. Smart sounds sort of, kind of overconfident. Strategic is overused. Intelligent is too long. This is going to get translated. Anyway, hemming and hawing over this one word. I threw it into content, into user testing to find out which adjective of all the options was most appealing in this title. This is actually Visual Thesaurus. I was going to town trying to figure out what the right word was. Visual Thesaurus is a great resource for looking at words that are quite similar to what you're looking for. Anyway, savvy was far and away the most preferred word in this content test, and this piece of content ended up kicking butt. Let me just say that it drove a lot of business for this team. It was blowing the lead generation out of the water. It was people were coming up to my desk saying, "How did you do that? What did you do to make this chunk of content do so well?" Like, yes, it did have a big marketing budget, but not any bigger than the other pieces of content this team of 40 people was turning out. And I was like, it's savvy. It's this adjective. This adjective is the magic secret sauce that really did it for this rather expensive piece of content that I knew I wouldn't be able to update for about 18 months. So anyway, savvy was awesome. A lot of other coworkers used it in their content, but it didn't do as well because their audiences were slightly different. So we landed on savvy as the adjective to use for this specific audience. And we made 3 more ebooks that had savvy in the title for this audience. And I was earning my keep with this one adjective. Let me just put it that way. Okay, I'm gonna get cranking. I made this up. I ripped off Maslow here, and I feel like this is just a guide, a framework for thinking about content testing opportunities in your company. At the foundation is words that you think everyone understands, but maybe they don't. Like, look at your homepage, look at your most valuable piece of content. What have you assumed is working, and what do you know is working? Pick out a couple words and determine what you want to test, and test them. I think new features and product names are great to test too if you can get in front of that. Validating your style guide is a super way to do content testing. And then jargon eradication is my personal pet peeve. Let's get rid of jargon everywhere. It's awful, but important to do. Okay. I was gonna do breakout rooms, but you know what? I think I'm gonna speed along and get to the nitty gritty that you're looking for with the targeting and all that. So I was going to do spin out rooms, but introverts rejoice. Let's skip that. I just want everyone to take a minute and think about, if I were to run a content test, what would I want to test and why? What do I want to know about my audience that I don't know for sure? And think about when you ask people a quantitative question, like if you have a multiple choice question of, five titles of a piece or five adjectives for your homepage, follow up your test question with a why question about why did you choose that option you did, and that's where you'll get those qualitative answers of golden nugget goodness. And I just want to say, this is I'm flashing back to my startup days. I know I'm spoiled. I work at Microsoft. I have tons of resources and a huge team to do my work. But when I worked at Rover, I was the only Rover.com. It was before they had a lot of the success that they've had. I had zero budget, and we would literally run downtown. We'd go to Whole Foods at lunchtime with a clipboard and chase people and say, "Would you please look at our website? Would you please look at our website?" And we'd give them $5 Starbucks gift cards for their time. That's guerrilla content testing, if you will. It was we got a lot of rejection, but it built a lot of character, and it was free, besides the $5, per person. We also did that kind of really inexpensive free research at Premier. We also went on the street, tapping my journalism background, running up to strangers and asking them for their opinion is a little scary, but it's worth it. I am an introvert, but I went into journalism to get over that. And running up to a stranger and asking them for their opinion is great. Primera had a lot of jargon on their website and in all their marketing and all their e-commerce. Adjudicate, copay, anything that has to do with healthcare and health insurance is complicated. And we went through as a content strategy team, we actually tried to eradicate all the hellacious words that don't mean, that aren't easily understood by our customers. And we came up with this list, this laundry list of words that we will never use again, words that we will use more clear language for. And we circulated this to the entire company and got buy-in even from the lawyers and bureaucrats who work in health insurance. Embraced this, and we saw a lift in our business because of it. And we actually also helped change law. We had our lawyers from Primera went to Olympia and told the bureaucrats there that they should replace some of their scary words and their scary language that you see in every explanation of benefits that you get in the mail or on the website. Replacing the scary language with clear language created a business lift. It's like a no-brainer. You'd think, well, no duh, but it was hard to do this, but it was worth it. When we got feedback from customers in the street, people would cry when we asked them, can you calculate your pharmacy bill from this? Do you understand what your copay is versus your deductible? People got emotional, and it was like the ethical thing to do, to be clear for our customers, not just for the sake of the business, but because we wanted to be good people and live with ourselves at the end of the day. All right. If you learn anything from this session, please think of this. When you're doing content testing, make sure you loop in all the people on your team who might be surprised or otherwise, you don't want to surprise people when you're doing content testing is what I'm trying to say. If you're testing current content that you might be optimizing or iterating upon, make sure that you're sensitive to the people who wrote it, or people who created the content that you're testing have feelings and you don't want to hurt their feelings. So be gentle when you do content testing, when you're proposing a test, when you're running a test, when you're sharing out the results. Just be sensitive to the people whose feelings might be hurt otherwise if you are not tactful. Ideally, a test, especially for Usertesting.com, I like to keep them to about 10 minutes maximum. You can pilot your tests to see how long they are. If they're too long, people are going to start, they're not going to get through the test, or the questions that you have at the end of your test won't have as helpful information as the first batch of questions. So try to keep it short, especially because people aren't making a ton of money people do get paid from Usertesting.com, but if you're doing content testing, like people in the street kind of testing or SurveyMonkey, they might not be compensated. So be respectful of your tester's time. Let's see. You can think of your big picture content and your micro macro. Think of it as a micro macro kind of thing. You can find out what information is missing. You can put like a paragraph from, I don't know, whatever key piece of content. If you have like a little section of your homepage, or you have a UX that's super important, like I'm thinking of the sign up when people are coming to Microsoft to buy content, there's super valuable high stakes content that we want to make sure is clear. Think of what you can test to find out what is missing, to see where you're assuming your customer's mindset, but you might not. And then there's like big picture and little picture is what I'm trying to say. I found the micro level is really valuable, but it's also great to know what is missing. Like at Primera, where we were missing the explanation of what silver means. Yeah, so just think of all the content types out there. You might have an infographic, you might have a video, you might have podcasts. Lord only knows there's 100 types of content, and you can test it all. You can test it, as long as you're not overwhelming your participants, you can test content till the cows come home. I found teams get really excited about this kind of thing and want to test all the time. It can take over your life. Don't let it take over your life, but be mindful of what you're looking for, and prioritize the content you test so you get the most valuable results and can run with them. This is kind of nerdy stuff of different formats that you can use. I like scale questions, like on a scale of 1 to 7, how confident are you when you read the sentence? That's powerful when you find out your customers are feeling really great about the content you wrote, or they're not. That's something that you can then take back to the drawing board and iterate upon. Or how likely are you to buy something from this website after you read this? that's something you can go to your team and say, this is super powerful, or we better go back and do a little bit more work before we launch this. You can, yeah, well, quick aside there, you can test content, of course, that you've already launched. Testing content before you launch is also super helpful, so long as you don't hold up your work back schedule and hold up the team. It can be distracting to have too many content tests going. Just keep that in mind, that you don't want to irritate your team and coworkers when you're doing content testing. You want to keep the ball rolling. As much as I would love to do content testing all damn day, there's only so many hours in the day to do it. All right, want to do a quick question break again, Larry? Or should I jump into user testing?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions that I think are kind of timely to what we were just talking about. So
Sure.
one was Diana asked, I hope it's pronounced Diana. I have a friend who pronounces it Deanna. Anyhow, apologies if I got that wrong. But anyhow, she asked, how do you balance your word choices when writing for two types of users of the same product? You know, one with a tech background and one with a non-tech background.
That's a fantastic question. I'd say that might be a question for your business. You know, what is your core market versus what is your secondary market? That you can't market to everyone. You can't do content. You prioritize. Like I think of our focus at work is increasingly on smaller businesses, because we know they're struggling during COVID and we want to help them out. So we're focusing more on small businesses of up to 10 people versus, you know, we do also market to enterprises of 100,000 employees each, or over 500 customers. We have to think about what is our goal from the business perspective, and that's really kind of at the core of content strategy. Is you're serving your customers, but you're also serving your business. It might be a question for your marketing team or your business planning team, product owners, that kind of thing. It's great to know what everyone thinks, but you know, choose your battles based on what you know. Hopefully from your business partners, what is the priority for you right now, this quarter, this year, for your particular company.
Okay. And we did have one last follow-up question on the silver issue.
Was that the wrong example to start with?
No, but no, this was an interesting addition to that thread, I thought, though.
Okay.
Lacey asked, what about adding like best choice or something? Like a lot of those kind of choice-based things, we'll put something like that. Did you consider something like that? Or?
Yeah, I think, again, because we're talking health insurance, we can't say choose this one because it might not be right for you. And we did have like a comparison page. Like when you jump from the homepage, one of the links is to a compare and contrast, sort of, you know, 3 columns of this is what you get with bronze and silver and gold, so people can see, oh my gosh, the gold plan is $700 a month, but you get a zillion things. And then the silver plan has a medium list. It's the Goldilocks version. And then the bronze, you only get a little bit, but you can go to the doctor for your checkup, so you can hopefully not, you know, so you'll know if you have some serious issue. Yeah, we couldn't do, there's, I think if we did not retest that landing page after we added that content, we just knew it was performing better because we saw on Google Analytics and, you know, Qualtrics, the other analytics programs we were using, we could see, we just saw this explosion of click-through on the silver plan after we added that tiny little couple, like 7 words made an enormous difference. So it worked for us, but you can, your results may vary, but yeah, think about what the analytics are telling you, and then if something is completely off the wall, test it and iterate accordingly, is what I would recommend.
Thanks. And there are some more questions, but I think they cluster nicely, and I think they can wait to the end. So go ahead. Okay. And I know everyone's probably like, where's the wine? I miss the in-person content strategy meetups because we always had wine and tabbouleh and the carrots and dip. And anyway, I know it's dinner time, so I will keep this cruising. For anyone who's looking for resources for user testing and getting pushback in your organization, I would recommend you go to the user testing site and download this report. Now, in full transparency, user testing paid for this. This is a total economic impact report. They are commissioned, so they are not completely neutral, but it is, I think, a great way to tell people, to show, like, if you have, I don't know, your chief marketing officer or whoever holds the purse strings in your organization, if they don't want to fund a platform like user testing, have them read this, and I think they'll change their tune.
There's also an article on Harvard Business Review. I think it's called something about the amazing power of online experiments. And they're talking about, some of it's A/B testing, but it also alludes to content testing, that there are great reasons, business reasons, to pursue this work. It is, content strategists, you have a bunch of work on your plate, you're overwhelmed, but this is time very, very well spent. And I like to try to at least do like 20% of my time doing content testing. That sounds like a lot, but I think if I don't know for sure what's resonating with my customers, shame on me. And you can see, as you do content testing, you should see your business results, whatever your KPIs are, you should see a lift in those, because you're talking your customer's language. You're talking in a way that they can understand, that they will act upon, that it resonates with them. They're going to click your call to action buttons. They're going to trust you that you are talking their talk and walking their walk when you use the language that is their language. And that's what content testing is for. So there's my high horse on that Forrester report. This is what you see when you go to usertesting.com. Not to just use your Zoom, I'm just more accustomed to user testing, and it's they're adding a bunch of cool features to it. You can get video clips, you can do more in-depth testing like baselining, system usability scoring. There's a whole lot of nerdy goodness in user testing, but this is like the basic version of how to run a content test with user testing. You can do prototypes that are really rough looking, or you can test apps. I usually choose website because that's what works for me. You can target it to specific people. If you have, five customers' email addresses, you can target it to them, make sure that you're abiding by your company's privacy rules, or you can use the panel function in user testing that lets you choose all sorts of criteria to hopefully get your test in front of the right people. Again, grain of salt, like these people who participate in user testing are getting compensated. There's an element of trust that these people are who they say they are. Now, you can target by age, you can target by industry. You can tell from the qualitative input if people are pretending to be someone just to take your test. I try not to worry about that unless I get a really wacky response that is just wrong, and I will toss that person from my test and replace them. This is a screen grab from user testing's default. It has 5. People ask me how many people should I put in a content test minimum. It defaults to 5, but I like 10 just because I was an English major, and doing math with 10 people or 20 people is so much easier to me than 5. Like I can say 80% saw this or 70% said this. I just kind of cheat and like 10 just for the sake of making the math easy. And also it's quick to get 10 testers. 100 is just, that's too much data to analyze. If you're doing a volume of content testing, 100 people taking a test is just, that's a lot. Unless you have all the time in the world to analyze your results. Yeah. So anyway, this shows you some of the industries that you can target to. I think depending on the product, check it out and see if your industry is here. You can also target other and use screener questions. If you want to open it up to the whole wide world, open up your test to the whole wide world. But most of us, I think, are probably operating in departments that have target audiences that we know we should be focusing on. User testing has added a whole number additional countries that you can target your tests to. I don't know Danish. I only know a couple of words in Danish. Depends on your company. If you have access to multilingual coworkers, go for it. But I think I usually test to Canada, UK, Australia, and the US to get English-speaking customers, because I only know French and English, and that's anyway. If you're working with a translation team or localization team, you can use user testing to make sure that your localized content is clear. You don't have to rely, Google Translate only gets you so far. I think this is wonderful for global companies that need to know that their content is landing in different countries. There's all sorts of other stuff up here in the corner. Are you employed? What's your age, your income? I found, this is sensitive. A lot of people are unemployed right now. With COVID is just all the upheaval with COVID is something to keep in mind, that there might be people who are unemployed who you used to be in your target market. It's okay to test with them. Anyway, just approach this with an open mind is what I'm saying. And this is an example of how to add a screener question. For example, if I were working on content for security admins, people who work to make sure that their company's security, online digital security is tight, I could target it to them and say, okay, you work in IT, but are you a security admin, like a specific type of person? You can add a little question in here, and if they answer yes, they get to jump through the hoop to take the test, and if they answer no, they get the Heisman. They're not allowed to take the test, and user testing will keep circulating this test with their testers until they find someone who fits the bill for your particular test. And this is a great, this is how you choose which question type to run. I have a couple detailed slides in here you can dig in later that I won't get into too much detail on given the time, but multiple choice questions are so fantastic to know, okay, out of these 5 choices, which title do you prefer? Which word do you prefer? Which description do you prefer? I love the multiple choice questions, but I always follow them up with why. Then you understand, you kind of stop the tester in their tracks and they tell you where they're coming from and what they're thinking. I think A/B tests, this is why I get on my high horse about content testing versus A/B testing, is A/B tests tell you what? They give you the, version A is the winner, version B is the loser, but it doesn't tell you why. And content testing is a great way to get that why. And that's, you might have a marketing department that can do that research for you. And if you don't, I just think it's so great as content strategists, our jobs are so hard. And this is a way to make your job a little bit easier. Yeah. User testing also has a lot of resources about minimizing bias in your test plan. I'm a dork, and I went and got my master's degree when I was 45 and had to do a lot of coding and statistical analysis of content to get my master's degree in journalism. So I know all of these, bias tips and tricks and what to avoid to make sure that research is as solid as possible. You don't need to know all that stuff. User testing can give you lots of tips to do that. You don't need to be a total dork like me and work full-time and get a master's degree. Anyway, my brother's he teaches statistics at the college level. He's a psychology professor. There is, it's helpful to be a nerd like that when you're doing this work, but you don't need to be a nerd to do this, to do it correctly. Just make sure that you're not adding leading questions. And this is an example of, instead of asking what do you like about this homepage, say, what do you think about this homepage? Because if you ask what do you like, people are going to try to give you things that they like, even though they might hate it. So phrasing your questions in a way that's as neutral as possible will get you the most trustworthy, most valuable results. And these are the slides I'm talking about that have lots of more details about how to phrase rating scale questions, or scale 1 to 7, multiple choice questions, and then the open-ended questions are just, you can just ask why. Ask why, and you will get amazing things. It's just so it's so great to get your eyes open from this kind of information that you see cropping up with the open-ended or qualitative question responses. And one just quick comment about qualitative. I've had people ask, qualitative, does that mean that qualitative, those answers are higher quality than the quantitative or numeric based questions and the answers? No, I think they're great because you get the golden nuggets, but it doesn't mean that qualitative data is better. It's just, that's just what it's called. That question often comes up when I'm doing trainings on user testing. Is qualitative, they're higher quality? No, they're just a different type of data. It takes more time to dig into that kind of information, but it is well worth the time to uncover these insights that make you go, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. And just some pro tips for when you share out your results. Keep in mind, like I mentioned before, when you're sharing results, your customers are important, but don't use what they say in your content tests to hurt anyone's feelings. That I know I've seen, I don't know, I have a chip on my shoulder working content for 20 years. I just feel it's hard getting through the day sometimes, just all the work that's on our plates. The last thing I need, or last thing I want to do to anyone else on my team is to hurt their feelings. So just be gentle when you're sharing out the results to make sure that you're phrasing things not like this is the worst content or this is the best content. That just be more neutral in the way that you present your results to show, let the numbers speak for themselves without bringing judgment or anything like that to the reporting. This is the kind of donut chart you get from user testing, which I find very valuable to present to senior leadership to show, oh, this is what the customers are saying about our content, and this is why I'm going with this title over those other titles. This can also be helpful if you're having a heated argument with your product owners or other people on your team who think they know what the customer wants. You can put it into content testing and get the results. You don't have to say I told you so, but you can often. Anyway, that's me joking about my product team, but no, I have great coworkers. I don't want to lead you otherwise. These donut charts are super impactful because they just visually show this is what we should do for our customer. This is what we should not do for a customer according to the user testing tests. And this is a output from one of the scale questions of on a scale of 1 to 7 or 1 to 5, or it's usually an odd number so you can better judge what the halfway mark is. Tell me what you think about blah. I love this one. It shows like, yeah, we're on the right track with this content choice, but it's not as impactful as it could be. I might go back to the drawing board with this content because it's not, we didn't see as many people saying, I love it as I expected, but at least we didn't have a lot of people saying, not at all, I'm not at all likely to engage with your content. Everything is on the right side of this scale. So this is good, but not great is what I'm saying about this slide. And this is how I quickly put together the results. If you have like 10 tests or 20 tests and you want to share them out with your whole team at the end of a quarter, at the end of a year, you can whip it together. And I am terrible at PowerPoint in case you can't tell, but this is just my quick way to put together test results to show this is what we did, this is when we did it, this is our hypothesis, or what we thought the results we were trying to get from the test. And a quick quote from the qualitative data to show what people are saying about the content. This format is plain as day. It's just super basic, but really went over well with teams I've worked on to just show this is our test result. Boom. You can get video snippets from user testing too. I don't know. I don't have all the time in the world to do report outs, but they're making it easier and easier to add videos and other multimedia in, to share out snippets, audio from your test results to get the voice of the customer even more. What's the word I'm looking for? Is it dinner time? Palpable, to make sure that you're understanding what your customers are saying. If you have a whole bunch of tests, if you go forth and test and test and test, and you have a body of test results, you can then do analysis on that body of research to see Uber trends in your research. This is more nerdy stuff, but if you have a collection of tests and you take a step back to get the bird's eye view of really what's going on with your customers and your content, you can get really, really valuable information at that meta-analysis level, but that's advanced placement, so there's that. And then I'm looking at the clock and I've got 1 minute, I think. These are my suggestions for embedding content testing into the way you work with your team. Test content before you launch it. Test content before you run an A/B experiment, so you're putting the most valuable versions of content out into your A/B tests, A/B experiments. Validate your style guide. Make sure you're targeting your priority audience, your secondary audience. Make sure that you're testing for the audiences that you're after. Test your competitors' content. See what your customers think about your competitors and see where you're missing out or maybe doing better than your competitors. That's a great way to use user testing and content testing. Share. Retest content. What works today in February 2021 might not be as resonating as it will. What I'm trying to say. Oh my God, my blood sugar is low. When you have a test result, don't just sit on it forever and ever and treat it like gospel. Retest periodically to make sure that your results are still true or still on the mark. What's working during COVID might not work after we're done with COVID. So that's a good thing. Or what works in February 2021 might not work in February 2022 for any number of reasons. So retest your content and don't just rest on your laurels that you had a test result and think it's good for 5 years. It won't be good for 5 years. So that's that. And I'm a Q&A. So I'm happy to answer other questions and suck it to me.
Great. Well, we'll go back up. I'll kind of batch them up. They kind of go back to earlier sections, but Dan had asked earlier in some of the I think it was the test phrasing and about the wording of questions. He asked, would keyword research help in some cases?
Yeah, and you know, keyword research, whether you're getting it from Google or wherever you get it from, there's SEMrush, Brightedge. There's so many ways you can get keywords. Where are they coming from? You know, as a Microsoft employee, I'm not sure I would, you know, Google keywords. They're another data point, I guess, in your content creation process. It's very helpful to know what keywords are being suggested by certain resources, certain keyword tools. They all vary a little bit. There's so many of them. I think it's good to check out a couple of them and not just use one, is what I'm trying to say. But that's a great question.
Yeah. There was also a question, Michelle had a question around reading level, specifically for local government site users. Do you have any guidance about that? Or
about making sure that the reading level aligns to recommended
well, and actually, and if
language?
Michelle, if you're on and want to unmute and clarify the question, that'd be fine.
Yeah. So when it comes to, I work for the city of Seattle, and as you know, the Seattle.gov is comprised of like 40 some department sites. So some sites, you know, you don't want an 8th grade level if you're dealing with a construction site, but in general, our team is responsible for the .gov, like what outside of the department sites. And so we target an 8th grade level or below is really what we're supposed to be. But I'm just curious, like that's a big constraint. I mean, that's where.
But it's true. I mean, I don't know. If you look in any sentence, I feel like simplifying language is hard. There are tools embedded into Microsoft Word and Hemingway. There are different tools you can use to simplify the language. But I'd say it's challenging. But like I did at Primera, if you have these difficult words that are part of your government website, you can hopefully simplify a lot of them. Some words can't be replaced. You know, especially if they're polysyllabic, they're going to bump up your grade level. But there's, I'd say, Sarah Richards' book on plain language, and what's it called? Someone can put it in the chat because my blood sugar is low and it's escaping me right now, and I'm looking for it in my pile of books. Content Design by Sarah Richards has a lot of guidance on that front, and she works for, or used to work for, I think, London government. Is that right? She used to work for a governmental agency.
She worked for the
UK.gov.
Yeah, and now she runs Content Design London. They also publish a readability guidelines book now.
Yeah, and that is hard, but I'd say power to you. You can do it. It sounds intimidating, but I think you could. I'm thinking of how you might embed that clarification into user testing. You can have version A, the current complicated version, and version B, the simple, easier to understand version. And you could test and say, tell me about what you think of these two versions. I don't know if that's something that you need to do to validate with your stakeholders, but I'd say testing content, the before and after, can be impactful too. To say, yes, my work is making a difference.
I'm just going to, sorry. Oh, sorry. I apologize. I'm just going to jump in real quick here. Sorry, because some people are starting to drop off. But just to remind everybody, we will make Erica's slides available. So there's a ton of great stuff in these slides. I know I was trying to take notes and stuff as she was going through. So it'll be great to even more. Great. I dropped some of this stuff in the chat too, but we'll put it on Slack as well. So we'll have her slides. We are, as I mentioned before, recording this, so we'll have a recording available. And just once again, please keep the conversation going. Join us on Slack. There's some great stuff going on in the chat here, and I don't actually want to stop Erica, or don't want to stop the questions yet, but just in case people are having to drop, I wanted to throw that out there. So
yeah, and happy to answer questions afterwards. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just want to thank you, Paula, for catching that. But so we got some more questions, Erica. Lawrence asked, and Lawrence, if you're online and want to elaborate on this, feel free to unmute yourself. Asked, can content testing give guidance for content length? And I don't know whether.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We do a lot of science-based articles. Work at Fred Hutch, and we do a lot of articles on cancer prevention and so forth. And there's always this debate about how it's actually similar to the other question about the grade level of the content and how long articles simply should be. And we look at things like scroll depth, the people go to the bottom of the page and stuff. But yeah, I guess fundamentally I wasn't sure.
Yeah, and I'd recommend, you can do a preference test. I think what the power of content, another great thing about content testing, I know I sound sycophantic, but often you can find out that the longer version of your content is clearer or more helpful. I don't know how many times I've been told, oh, people don't read your content. It's usually from designers who say that kind of stuff. Not all of them. I love the designers I work with, but sometimes you'll hear, oh, people don't want to read that. It's too long. Content testing can help support or refute that you can put two versions of content in front of your customers, either with a screen grab or just the content itself. Put two blurbs in front of testers and say, which do you prefer and why? And you'll get an eyeful and an earful of what's working and what's not. They'll tell you when they're overwhelmed. They'll tell you when, oh, this one's longer, but it's clear. And that's validating too. And that, little boost for the content people in the world to know that your work is appreciated. Sometimes you have to be clear, you have to include more details, and that's just a fact.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And Stacy asked, do you ever test alt text, like in images, I assume?
Oh, interesting. And I would imagine you could do that. And I haven't done content testing with purely an audience of people who are using screen readers or other assistive devices, but I would imagine that's something that you could do. That you could do it either just do a test to a typical, I shouldn't say typical, you can do test alt text to see if it's clear, just get feedback on it itself, but you can also test with targeting to people who are using screen readers to see how useful it is. I think there's lots of alt text guidance, again, Sarah Richards, Kat Holmes, there's lots of guidance for how to write alt text that's clear and short and useful. But yeah, I think alt text is something that's getting a lot more attention given Google's changing their SEO algorithm in May, and alt text is going to be part of that. That if you don't have alt text, you're going to get dinged, and if you have crummy alt text or missing alt, alt text needs to be useful and clear, but as succinct as possible, and that's hard to do. So, but something that needs to be done.
But it is testable. Cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question.
Cool. And Lena asks, and again, Lena, if you're online and want to unmute and elaborate on this, but asks, with multiple choice questions, how do you ensure that you're presenting the right options to test? That is, avoiding bias in the options you're presenting. And would you also include other as an option to capture
definitely.
responses?
Yeah. And if you want to look at the deck afterwards, other is absolutely a great question to include, because you might not have all the choices that your customers might want. I think it's absolutely great to say other, and then if someone does respond other, say, what's your other suggestion? And that's a great way to reduce bias in multiple choice questions, is to have several choices and then none of the above or other, and then ask people what that other would be. You can get a lot of really interesting responses with that, and then ask the perennial follow-up question, why? And then get more qualitative input from, whoops, there goes my pen, with that kind of question, multiple choice, quantitative, and then followed up with a qualitative why or tell me more, is a great neutral way to ask for feedback. I also like to add, use as much detail as you would like, because people might be a little reluctant to chat. I don't have that problem, obviously, but some people who are taking tests might be laconic, and you want to tease more content, more information out of them. Tell them, use as many, tell me as much detail as you would like about your response to encourage them to open up and give you that kind of input.
Cool, thanks. And I'm not sure the name, is it Neri? I'm not sure, but anyhow, I love their question, and I think we've all had this question.
Neri's my coworker.
Yeah, and they ask, what do you say to the PM who tells you we can't test everything?
We can't. No, we can't, because there's only so many hours in the day, but we can prioritize what to test to get the most value out of it, whether it's a new product name or the most important section of the UX experience or the title of an ebook that you're going to spend $100,000 to market. We can prioritize and be wise in what we choose to test to get the biggest bang for our buck, because it does. I think our team has determined it takes like 10 hours from soup to nuts when you're planning a test, writing out your test plan, getting it into user testing, analyzing the results. It can take 10 hours, which is an investment. So we want to pick and choose wisely. I think what's great is when you get more people in your team involved in testing, there's more testing to be done. And, you know, I've got PMs coming to me now saying, can we test this? And I just met with someone today to get a user testing test up and running. My PM's asking for content testing, which is great. And we're going to do it. And we're going to figure out what content is resonating the most in a very high impact chunk of content that honestly, it's a little nerve wracking to make a decision of what to put into it. But at least with the content testing results, we can say we're putting our best foot forward. This is an informed decision. It's not statistically significant, but at least we're doing our due diligence to choose the words that we think from the input we're getting from our target audience should be resonating with our audience when we put it live and hit launch.
Oh, thanks. And Heidi just put in a question. How do you work with stakeholders, especially those new to content testing, to help them understand that test results and language change over time? Like she's thinking, and Heidi, if you want to chime in and elaborate, she says that, for example, or that is like if a term lands one year, might not land the same way the next year in testing.
Yeah, well, I mean, language is fluid. I don't know if you've read Because Internet, or there are lots of podcasts about how language is fluid and, you know, language is regional. What works in Seattle might not work in Boston, or what works in Seattle might not work in Rio de Janeiro. So you can test and find out. I'd say there's also plenty of information on UserZoom, user testing, other Nielsen and Norman Group on the value of content testing. If people don't want to do it, that's you know, there's plenty of fodder to make the case to do it, and to do it on a regular cadence. If you can work it into your sprint, do a test every sprint. You know, every 2 weeks do a test, or do a test once a month at least, to get that wheel going of input is super helpful. And I think people get excited and they talk about it. Like my PM talked to another PM and said, "Oh, Erica's done some content testing. Do you want to do that too?" They spread the word, and then you might just have the problem of too many people asking for content testing, which is a good problem to have, because you can say, yes, content is valuable. You finally get it. You know, come to my office hours, or here's how you can do user testing yourself to get more input, instead of relying on A/B tests, which take longer and are just a huge investment if you think about it.
Well, thanks. Hey, and I had a methodological question. You mentioned a couple times having 7 choices in multiple choice responses, or in the range of options.
In a scale
Yeah.
question.
Is there a mathematical or survey best practices reason for doing that? Or
I think they're usually odd. I think the default in user testing is 5 on a scale of 1 to 5. Is this, you know, are you most likely to buy, or are you least likely to buy, or whatever the choice is. Then you have a midpoint, so you can say, oh, 3 is neutral, and then 1 and 2 is not great, and 4 and 5 is wonderful, or positive, or whatever you want to call it. Usually having an odd number in scale questions is helpful, just to gauge what the results mean. I like to bump it up to 9 sometimes, because, you know, depending on the question, there might be nuances of, yeah, it's not a 1 or a 2, but it's more like a 4. Like, depending on what your customers, what your product is, what your industry is, there might be a more nuanced response. And that's why, like the bar chart I showed, you know, at least the results were skewing on one side of the scale. It's helpful to just get that snapshot. And I think the results of those scale questions are super helpful too, to show your stakeholders, to show your senior leadership, hey, we're on the right track, or this needs a little bit more work, or we're off the mark and we have to go back to the drawing board, which it's fine to get. I wouldn't call that a negative test result. I would call that an insightful test result that lets you know it's time to do a little bit more work before you put that content in front of the audience.
Cool. And Susan just asked a question. When testing with Usertestingcom, is it better to test variations of an experience? Do you like this or that, or to stay focused on one design?
Oh, I didn't even get to design, but think about what you're looking to learn. I'd say you can do like a hybrid test of content and design together, or I found it really fascinating to do pure design user testing where like those ebooks I was showing you, does this cover appeal to you more, or which cover has more visual interest to people? I got some really fascinating results on design focused content testing or design focused testing. And it's the why. The why answers are always enlightening. An example of that is I had a IT security ebook, and one of the covers was just really plain and just had the title, and it was just kind of, I thought, kind of blah. And then there was this really fancy graphic with the globe and numbers, and it was all like, I don't know, about data and security. Anyway, it was this high-tech looking cover, and the low-tech plain cover actually was more appealing because we asked, why do you like this cover over that cover? People said, my job is hellacious. It's super stressful. I have insomnia. I don't like that busy cover because it's stressing me out. My dinner's here. There's the lights just went out because my dog just arrived and my husband's here with food. Oh my gosh, yum. Yeah. So anyway, again, your hypothesis is really go in with a point of view about what you want to learn. What do you want to learn? What can you achieve? You don't want to test things you can't launch. Like, if we couldn't afford to pay the artist who made the cover for that ebook that was really fancy, like we wouldn't want to test it, which is something to consider. But we wanted to know we wanted something that would stand out in the busy market when people are on social media and LinkedIn. We wanted something visually compelling that would pop, but it turned out the not poppy cover did better. And that was another, I could have had a V8 gobsmacking sort of test where it was like, I never would have thought that. And people were saying, you don't need to test that. The answer is obvious that the fancy one's going to win, and the fancy one did not win. So again, biases being blown out of the water and people being surprised by what you're learning with this kind of testing.
Let's get more. And that book link I just dropped in, that's the Because Internet book that you just, that Erica mentioned. I dropped that in the chat. And we'll share this on the Slack, but you can also save the chat, those little 3 dots at the bottom of the chat screen.
Yeah, that's a great book and podcast to go with it, and other podcasts about language fluidity and how it's evolving, and their books on dictionaries and how languages, they used to say you shouldn't end a sentence with a preposition. All these grammar rules are changing, and your customers are changing, everything's changing. So testing is a way to stay on top of all that stuff. Oh, and then Dryers English. Dryers is great, and he's so fun to follow on Twitter too. He's very
yes. Sorry, when you said that about, I had to show this because this is my favorite thing, and I have his calendar.
Oh, you have his calendar.
The day calendar, whatever.
He has a game that goes with Dryers English.
Yeah,
there's like a card game for word nerds.
Yeah, well, we're getting worried about your nutrition, Erica.
Yeah, your blood sugar.
No, I'm sorry for the little blood sugar drop there. No, no, I love these questions. These are great. If people have other questions, I don't know if they want to ping you, Paula and Larry, or find me on LinkedIn. Happy to keep the conversation rolling. There's like advanced placement content testing we can get to too. Maybe later in the year or some other. If people want to chat content testing, happy to chat more.
I have a question, Erica.
Yeah,
Rebecca.
Oh, sorry.
This will go quick.
Oh, hi, Rebecca. Hi.
And by the way, I agree with you. I missed the tabbouleh and the wine and last time I saw you and Larry at Moz back in January.
Oh, right.
But anyways, I appreciate this. I've been listening in, and so one of the things I do at Expedia Group is I work on the conversation platform. So we use user testing. We look at access points and we look at different tones and voice in the virtual agent, the chatbot. But because I'm working on a platform, it's really hard to lean into a brand essence when we don't know the brand or even industry that's going to use the so I'm wondering if you have any experience with that. So I'm so used to writing things for an end user, a specific customer, but in
having a persona, you don't have your persona or that kind of guardrail yet.
Right. It's
Yeah.
challenging. So, I mean, we're still getting learnings from or lessons from our user testing, but we're kind of like being agnostic somewhat, and because we don't know exactly who the end user is going to be. Because
Well, I mean, you could also, that's something you could test your own content and also test the competitors. Like, how do you want to differentiate your brand from, it's kind of a brand question. Like, how do you want to be different from your competitors? What geo, I'm thinking of different geos, like where does the business need to succeed the most? Where are you drilling into for, where do you want to make impact? That's a juicy, that's fun. And I'd say when people, you can ask questions of, you put some sample content into user testing, and you could ask, what 3 adjectives come to your mind first when you look at this? Or when you read this, how do you feel? You could do hedonic testing, which is asking people their emotional state from consuming your content. You can use the Plutchik wheel of emotions to get different content different adjectives to describe emotional states or ways of feeling. And, you know, not to put words in their mouth. I think some people, if you ask them, tell me 3 adjectives of how you feel today, they'll be really good at providing some. Or you could do a multiple choice. You could do tons of multiple, you could put 15 different adjectives and say which ones apply the most. Lots of ways you could dig into that. That's a juicy, fun problem that you could really dig in. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And do you attribute the competitor content to the competitor, or you just sort of use it within the content?
Wade carefully, some people scrub out their brand when they do user testing, so it's not identifiable. Right. If you're testing your competitor and there's like a logo or something, if it's public content, it's fair game. But I would wade carefully, because you could, you don't want to, not that you would do anything libelous, but you want to be careful if you don't want to say anything negative about the competitor. You want to be as unbiased as possible when testing their content, but you could scrub out any logos or any identifying product names to really understand how people are reacting. Like if you're going to test Nike versus Adidas, just do it as unmistakably Nike. Sometimes that's harder to do, but not impossible. Definitely a fun way to approach it. Like, okay, where are we missing the boat? Where are we doing better than our competitors?
Love it.
All that.
Thank you. And by the way, if your blood sugar is low, you can't show it because
you know what? I just want to show you all. My husband went to Red Mill Burger and brought me some onion rings and a burger. I'm so excited. I live in
wonderful.
There's a Red Mill Burger down the street, so
you're showing remarkable restraint.
Right. If you never had a Red Mill Burger onion ring, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. Yeah.
All right. Well, that might be a good note to end on. Well, Erica's onion rings are still hot. We will let her go. But thank you again. This has been
thank you, everyone,
so
for
interesting.
hanging out on a Wednesday and talking content stuff.
And thanks everyone for your great questions. I keep kind of flogging, join us on Slack. We want to keep up with people. We will share the slides, we'll share the recording, and keep watching Slack or the Meetup channel or Meetup page for events. We do this every month, and we'd love to see you again. So thank you.
Thanks everyone. Keep the questions coming, and I will share this deck ASAP.
Thanks, Erica.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Thank you.
Keep up the fight.